we all either hear first, see in motion, think first. We all have different ways of approaching information first. But one of the things that's important, I think, for a choreographer, a stager, a show creator, a designer, is to be able to see in motion. You've got to be able to visualize things in motion. And I think that's number one. What you do is find the artistic impulse you want to explore, and then find what's necessary. Because that is a whole other way of freedom of exploration. May I quote an old favorite quote of mine, Quentin Crisp? Anybody know who that was? You know who that is? Okay. Old actor, performer, right? We went, when they were still alive, we went to see this very small gathering and was on a tour. And somebody said to him, it was a young person too, which is interesting. It was like, well, what else do you want to do? What else do you need to take in before you go? And he was like, oh, my dear, I never thought of it that way. I thought, what else is in me that has to get out? What else do I need to let out? And I think that's what keeps you on that journey of moving forward through your life, is what else is in you? What else have you, processed? What else is in you that has to get out? And if you keep looking at that, then perhaps your creativity will keep moving forward.
Hey everybody, it's Tim Hinton, the beast of the marching arts, and we are getting to talk to a really smart person today. Michael Raiford is here. Michael, how are you?
Way to set me up, Tim. I'm great. How are you?
I will say one of my favorite people to talk to. Dr. Mary White is with us. Mary, how are you?
I'm doing good. Not as smart as Michael Raiford, for sure.
Oh, great. Oh man.
Genius era continues. Brilliant.
There is a cliff to be fallen off of here.
No, I have to tell you, Michael, every time I get to interview you and we have a conversation really about anything, I just have the time of my life. And usually I'll pick some screenshot from our video where I'm like, oh, I can't believe you just said that, So I'm sure that'll happen again. But thanks for being here to talk.
Thank you. I truly thank you for having me and asking me. I really appreciate it.
So, of course, everybody knows, Michael, you are a designer of all different kinds of things, including all the world of marching arts, the Winter Guard stuff for sure, drum corps stuff, just epic, lots of theater, ballet, et cetera, et cetera. So I have a list of some things I want to ask you about, but we don't have any real direct format here, except that we just want to talk and hear about some things. But I'm going to start in a very strange place. And I know you're not expecting this, but for some reason, as I've been getting ready for this interview, I keep wondering what Michael Raiford was like little Michael, like in elementary school even, or something. Like, I'm sure that you were this sort of creative, always drawing, whatever. Like, I wanted to hear about little Michael. What would you tell us?
First of all, it was little Mike, because I am deep South. It was Mike.
Little Mike.
Where
were you when you were growing up?
Jacksonville, Florida. Jacksonville.
All right. So tell us about you. I'm interested. If you don't mind, you don't have to talk about this, but I'm just fascinated. Like, were you that kid that was always drawing, or always, like, what were you doing?
I made up stuff, but I didn't draw. That's what's really interesting. There were coloring books, and I have coloring books that I still have some of them, because I could not stay inside the lines, and I used to draw my own stories on the page, of course. But that was that outlet. And my mother notoriously would have me open a book for friends and read it, but I wasn't reading it. I was making up a story to the pictures I saw. So, right. But my mother thought it was hilarious. People were like, oh my God, you can read? She's like, yeah. So you can see where some of that came from, was my mother. But yeah, no, I mean, I was certainly a creative kid, but we didn't grow up in an environment where you went to the arts a lot or anything. Our yearly artistic outing was a Holiday on Ice. I still have every program.
That's awesome.
Every program. One of the designers I found out later in my life was Freddie Whittup, who designed the original costumes for Hello Dolly. And I managed to meet him at one point in my life. So because I would go through every page of that every time and decide which costume I wanted to wear. Gender meant nothing to me. I like that one. I like that headdress. I like that. I like that. And so unknowingly, I had a hero or somebody, there was a person that did these things that my little, deep South only artistic outing was Holiday on Ice, turned out to be a very famous designer. So, yeah.
How did you happen to meet him?
Once I was in grad school, USITT, United States Institute of Theater Technology conferences every year. He was a guest speaker, and this was long enough ago that he was very elderly and I was much younger, and so our times crossed.
That's awesome too.
Which was lovely. Yeah.
Well, I have to tell you, I very clearly remember the excitement of getting to see Holiday on Ice as a kid. This was a really big deal. And I mean, really, I fell in love with figure skating and ice skating way back then.
Yeah.
Tim,
I actually,
boy of the South.
I'm sorry, Mary?
Is also a boy of the South.
I am.
Oh, right.
Of course, from Atlanta. Yeah, and now Michael, I guess I can admit this on video, like I still will not miss Disney on Ice every year. It's like the ice show that always comes to town. I go every time. I have seen like 40 of them. I can tell you stories from being in the rink when something happened. I could sit here and fill the whole hour with stories from Disney on Ice.
No, I love it.
That's not going to happen on everybody.
Please don't. Dr. Mary says quit.
That's not going to happen. And J. Rhodes Millsap says hello.
Oh,
So thanks.
Hello.
I think I know who that is. Thanks for watching. Okay, so Michael, you're a little kid. So when did you get into theater? Did you get into theater? Did you get into music? Like what happened? How did you end up where you are? Not the whole story, but like as a little kid, did you end up on stage? Were you designing sets for 7th grade? What was happening?
Got into band and chorus, and that was it. Band and chorus, and through high school, band and chorus, and then I was in band. I played drums. I was the kid who became the pit drummer for the musicals and the kit drummer for the chorus, and so started doing that. And then so that got my admiration of it, but I didn't actually do anything. Well, slight pause. Sorry, family pressure, wasn't allowed to be a music major. So, went into business and into law school. But at the same time, like I was at Florida State, I was in the marching band, I was in the wind ensembles, I was over in the theater department all the time. So once that part of my life ended itself, I went back to school in music because that's what I knew. And in that process was actually another one of my Pompano Beach kids that was in Suncoast, that was in the theater department. And I'm like, hey, what's that? Because we were just a couple years apart, really, in time. And that's when I first started exploring theater. I had no idea that there was you could major in that. And here comes the big one. And then one day I'm teaching the drum corps thing, Suncoast Sound. And this guy comes up to me and was like, did you do this? And I'm like, well, yeah, I did this. And it was Michael Cesario. And Michael Cesario then mentored me to go into design. And that's where that really happened, was that like, no, really, you could do this. I had no idea. So it was stumble block, did my undergraduate in theater, costume, went straight into grad school in costume, trying to do costume and set, and just plowed through it, got out, then started really learning what I do. There you go. How's that? I've got that under 2 minutes.
I love that Michael Cesario connection because I think he's so good at that. Is like finding really great, talented people. And I think he's so brilliant at that. And that's my other reminder right now to check in with him, isn't it, Tim?
It is. Yeah, we do need to check in with him. But the thing I love about this, Michael, is we underestimate the impact we can have on other people's lives simply by a kind comment, a suggestion, an encouragement. Hey, did you think about this? Like, I feel like that fact that Michael Cesario went out of his way to encourage you and saw your genius and helped you, like, this is a really inspiring thing we all need to remember.
It is. And there was an entire generation of people who did that at that time.
Yeah.
I really, I keep reminding myself to do more. I'm slight plug for Bluecoats. We have a fellowship program, which is really doing that now in a wonderful way. And we just met with our fellows for this year. Mind you, those are people coming to us, and I just say, I'll put it on me. I need to do an even better job of helping people. I tell people all the time in the activity, if you want to talk, let me know. I constantly do that. I think it's important to give back. It really is. Yeah.
And we get so wrapped up in our own little projects, and we're competing against those people. We can't communicate with those people. So it's just not how it should be.
No, it's not. No, I nothing more satisfying in the world than someone you've helped who actually gets rewarded. Period.
10 times. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, and to the point you just made, I feel like, Michael, I've had the real advantage of getting to talk to a lot of really smart, very, very successful people, designers or educators in our activity and otherwise. And the ones who are great and do great things, they never worry about that part that everybody else gets all wrapped up in, about what everybody else is doing or how is my score. Like they transcend that.
Yeah. Yes. The better we all are, the more we survive in a world and an activity. So it's super important.
Where the arts always seem to be on the chopping block.
Absolutely. The arts are on the chopping block, and literally even in the world that, in our pageantry world, the art side of it can easily be put on the chopping block too.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you mentioned in passing being at Suncoast and Michael coming up to you, was that the famous Vietnam Wall for that show? Do you remember?
It was around then.
It was around then. Before
it was around then. It was around 84. It was around then. Yeah. Shirley Whitcomb had already also been a massive support. Like she saw the first stuff I did, and I can tell it now. She secretly had me flown to her place in California to talk to me about what the next evolution might be like,
Wow.
And, so she was super supportive. Georgia Oliviero was super supportive. Cesario then found me and then helped that. So I know it was pre-86. Mm-hmm. But yeah. So yeah, somewhere in there. So, and I literally shifted from being a music major to being a theater major, like because of him and other opportunities. Like that's where that shift happened. I remember the day I quit my music major, and Bob McCormick, University of South Florida Studios, like literally went, it's like, oh, sorry, but yeah, kept playing.
Well, you're one of those people that I love that is designing at such a high level, major productions of ballet and theater and all kinds of stuff, and still sharing your expertise and talent with us in the marching arts. Do you just love it? Is that why you're still doing it? Because you're getting to work with such cool groups too, but it's hard to stay involved at a high level and keep your enthusiasm for this long time.
It's because I don't just do it. And that is very true. It's because it's a balance of things. I do love it. I completely love it. It is where my, I can drop back now and look as a kid at my grandmother's house, riding my little bike to the next block and watching the marching band. And just like I became the majorette's mascot because I was at the rehearsal every day, and I'm like 10 years old or something. You know what I mean? It's just the thing that everything made sense to me, So yeah, I love it. I don't see not doing it. If you told me today I could win the lottery, make your choices, I might reduce how much I do, but I wouldn't not do it.
Right. Nice.
Yeah.
Now, you were raised in Jacksonville, but how did you get to Pompano Beach? Because I know you taught like them during
We moved when I was in 9th grade to Hollywood, Florida. Yes.
Gotcha.
That's where we moved. My mother, you'll enjoy this. My mother was the one whose job moved, and my father at that time had enough forethought to go, this is smart, because this is the early 70s, right? And so my mother ended up being the first female executive in the AT&T system. So quite a brilliant woman.
Bravo, Mom.
Yeah, bravo, Mom. So Mom was the one who taught me to kick ass, take names, and do all that with a martini in your hand. That was Mom. That was Miss Charlotte. Everybody knew Miss Charlotte for that. Yeah.
That seems familiar, Mary, but I'm not going to even dwell on that. Michael, if you knew how many times Mary and I guess I can say this, were having a cocktail after a marching band rehearsal where we had survived some experience.
Oh, yeah.
Mary, I always had a martini, and I guess I used to have a glass of wine. Now I'm a whiskey guy. But anyway, Mary, you know what I'm talking about. We don't have to. This is not what we need to be talking about.
Please tell me more about Dr. Mary.
Dr. Mary. Oh, Michael, might be you're not going to call me Mary, but this is a really cute nickname, I think.
What's that, Mary? Dr. Mary.
Cute.
It is.
Yeah, you can get away with it.
Thank you. I'll try.
All right, so Michael, I want to jump and talk about your nutcrackers.
Oh, sure.
Because we were talking about this for a minute, Mary. Like you designed a nutcracker, and I thought that was cool. But now you're doing another one. So tell me how this works. Like people call you up and say, Michael, we want you to come do a nutcracker for us. I mean, obviously you're a world-class designer. You've been flown to Russia to get awards. Like we know this is like major stuff. But like, I'm interested in how that works. And then I do have some specific nutcracker questions.
Okay. It's all the same thing. It's networking. It's, you met this person here, you met that person there. My Oz ballet was at Nevada Ballet Theater. The choreographer was back in town he's the artistic director of the Hong Kong. So Septime Weber, he came back in because we were making some adjustments and we knew that it was going to go to Hong Kong. So he wanted to do some edits before it went to Hong Kong. So we're sitting there and I'm at Nevada Ballet and I know they're looking for someone for, they had an upcoming nutcracker. And so, I met the artistic director who was very nice and we started chatting and it went from there. So
that's so cool.
Yeah, that's great.
So iconic. It's one of those things. It's sort of like for band directors, the whole suite in F, everybody thinks they know exactly how it's supposed to go.
Yep.
So how do you figure out what kind of nutcracker and, can it be crazy and fun? Does it need to be traditional? You have to figure that out, right?
Yeah. You absolutely have to know where you're designing, why you're designing, what they want it for, and if that works for you. Are you in the right place for the right job to do what you do? So the cool thing about the one I did open last year was at Oklahoma City was that there was no parameters there. A young artistic director who wanted to put his own stamp on it, a great creative team, Holly Hines, who has done 6 nutcrackers and was the resident designer at New York City Ballet, Trad Burns, who is like a major Disney designer, and he did Oz and blah, 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 blah. You just had the right people in the room to go, how much can we rethink this? And so our rethinking, and to me, what's important is that people can walk in and relate to it somehow in your contemporary world. So we moved it just enough forward in time so that people could relate to it a little bit more. And we set it in the 19 teens so that you had this beautiful Art Nouveau world you were in. Yeah. But it also means that women's gowns were coming in and a little more relatable to the times, the teens things. You see stuff now that could be that. So, that's what we worked on from that premise. And then we also did some rethinking to try to make it a little more relatable. And so many different stories that have 4 kids that take a journey, not 2 kids that take a journey, and what Narnia did and all these things. So it's the same music, the same everything. You're not going to change that. But just by focusing on different things, it freshened it up. So
give me an example of one of the things that you focused on that was unusual for Nutcracker.
That all 4 kids take the journey, and the kids' names change depending on which version of Nutcracker, but so the girl and her sister, and then the magician's apprentice and the son, those 4 take the journey. Most of them, it's only, 2 of the kids take the journey. So I'm just going to speak broadly here. And in this case, 4 of the kids took the journey. And also does the magician end up hosting and kind of creating the whole thing, Drosselmeyer, what is that point of view? Where do you end up at the end? Do you come back to what world? Was this a dream? Wasn't it a dream? You can mess with those things and kind of create your own version of it, and then graphically and the look of it, I ended up in some fantasy places, most cases, snow is in specifically a snow-covered tree forest, as opposed to this world, while you see a few trees, everything in these Art Nouveau lines feels like the movement of snow, not a literal place, So we were able to play with things like that, which was really fun. Yeah.
And the Land of Sweets was still sweet. I mean, it was still...
I called it Sugar Plum's Realm, and so it really was based on Sugar Plum in this beautiful kind of Art Nouveau palace, and we let the costumes speak more of the candy, even though there were sugar plums around and all this. Yeah. So yes, so a lovely way to do it. And then in Las Vegas, my pitch was, because it takes place in the Smith Center, which is this beautiful performing arts center that is completely Art Deco based. I pitched that we actually set it in 1930 in an Art Deco era, which is also gorgeous gowns for women. And that way it would sit in this place that you're in and feel a part of the world that you're in, because it's set in this kind of high Art Deco era. Now, in this case, they're doing the Balanchine version, which is the traditional New York City version, which you'll enjoy now because the Balanchine Trust is involved, and we cannot change the story. We cannot change the steps. Everything has to work with that, but we're changing the visual.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that speaks to what we do in the band world all the time. Are you using the music? Can you put the music in a new context? Do you have to be historical with it? Can you shift another visual and add it to it? Will it go with it? Will it make sense? Will people respond? Will your producer respond? You know? Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, but I find that I get really excited when you talk about that, because I feel like that's one of those things that we are able to do in our world of the marching arts, right? It's like you can take a traditional set of music and it's going to be played the way we feel like it should be played, perhaps, right? And then do something completely unexpected and original and fun and exciting with what the visual is. And if it makes sense, which is, of course, the trick, then it's such a thrilling experience.
If it resonates, if you find that way to make it magically resonate in a way people didn't understand it could or would, yes, that's when you have major success. Success being, to me, like you've created something new. Yeah.
So has this Las Vegas Nutcracker already been out, or it's coming out soon?
It's coming up. I literally will shut this and keep working on it. And I'm doing costumes and sets on it. So it's a double header. Yeah. Yes, and wonderful team.
And you just got into the costuming as a natural extension of all of the sets and theater work.
Actually, my MFA is in costume design. So I'm a costume designer first, and the scenic stuff, when I got out of my graduate work, I wanted to do both. There wasn't time to really study both. And I just started working on set design more. And honestly, the first place I was hired outside of Austin was as a set designer. And guess who got known as a set designer? You know, I mean, most of my work in band up until we didn't have, had sets was all costume work. And I still do. A lot of high schools I still design costumes for as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, Michael Cesario's background in costuming as well. I mean,
yes. Yeah, that's where he first mentored me to go into, was specifically costume design. Yeah. Yep.
So we have a really interesting question from someone who's watching. What draws you to your unique color palettes? I think that's a great question, because they are like unexpected and brilliant. So can you explain that? What draws you to these unique color palettes?
I'm going to sound like this is philosophical, but it's not. I think you have to live in life and you're constantly taking in new things, and then they accidentally get assigned to the jobs you're working on, and I think it's just a process of that. So I'm constantly looking for things, I'm constantly researching. I'm constantly trying to understand what world we're living in right now. Are we living in a cool world? Are we living in a warm world? Or are people mixing the neutrals, And, I'm constantly looking at that. What colors are popular in fashion design and in home design and interiors and architecture? So that is something we just naturally do. And I try to keep that flowing through me and try to find new things. The biggest disappointment in the world is to understand, wait, I have to do this math. There's only, it's a part of a class I teach. It's only 12 choices in the world. How many notes are there? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. There's 7 notes, pardon me, and variations. There are 3 colors, and there's 2 lines, straight and curved. Everything else is arrangement and context and variation. So get that stuff down and then keep looking for the new arrangement, the new context of it. But I mean, that's really what it is. And of course, I'm always going to try to find a little different twist on something just to make it fun for myself too, to be honest.
Well, and then your experience and expertise and all the things you've seen and done and studied and paid attention to gives you this wealth of information to pull from, right? Which is what makes someone like yourself so special, because you have so much information and experience, because you've been doing it for a long time, which is something Mary and I've been talking a lot about lately, is taking all of that experience and wisdom and then putting it out into the world in unique ways. That's why I probably couldn't think of that color of green that was on those giant chairs in that Bluecoats show that I just loved. But I can't tell you, Michael, how much I loved that. Why did my heart sing when I saw that color green on those giant chairs?
Because it bounced off the field so wonderfully.
Because
it's that it had just enough yellow in it that it literally bounced off the field and it magnified the color around it. It's like it has its own vibration with it, So yeah.
Well, that's like from the first time I ever saw it, that's still one of my all-time favorite things is those giant chairs. I really wanted to buy one. I almost bought one to put in my backyard. I found out there was one available.
There probably is back one at Jeff Herr's place. I'm sure.
Jeff has one in his backyard, and he was going to sell it to me. And I thought, okay, at the time.
To be fair, it's not a backyard; it's an entire farm. But
who was going to sell it to you, Tim? I missed that.
Jeff Herr. He's the genius that builds all of those props and sets and things for the course these days. And I've had the chance to talk to him and his associates a lot. And man, that's so fascinating. How much fun.
He's incredible. They're great guys. He and Chris Lewis, which is his daughter's husband now, they do a lot of the work together. Yeah, he started out doing a band show for a friend's daughter's band, and then all of a sudden got into this, and now they do at least half the top 12 in DCI and so many bands.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's how it works, right? This is how the world works, Michael. You ended up where you ought to be, but you didn't even head in that direction. I feel like I want young people to know this. It's you don't have to have it all figured out going into college or even leaving college. Life has a way of having you end up exactly where you ought to be, and it won't be anywhere you even thought you would go.
When I do that class for my friend at St. Edward's University, I try to always get the students to talk about what they think they want to do and how much does it matter if they know it right now. And, the difference in the arts, especially of exploring over time, and finding the right block, the right building, the right floor, the right room, takes a while for the adventure to happen.
And it's okay that the process doesn't have to be linear at all.
No, it doesn't have to be linear. People think you're supposed to get out and get a job. Well, it just doesn't happen that way anymore now. And people now in so much of the business world, if you stay somewhere too long, people get suspectful that you're not ambitious enough. So people change jobs regularly just to not look stagnated, So you're like, well, there you go.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Me.
Yeah, I have a hard time with this because I'm such a planner and I really do want to know exactly what's about to happen. But I have learned that is not the way my life is going to work. And so I'm just trying to become more of a go with the flow kind of guy. We have another really good question here about what is your process for designing flags that look so good in motion?
That's a great one. In all seriousness, you have to really work. So we all either hear first, see in motion, think first. We all have different ways of approaching information first. But one of the things that's important, I think, for a choreographer, a stager, a show creator, a designer, is to be able to see in motion. You've got to be able to visualize things in motion. And I think that's number one. Super key, important to work on that. Number two, you have to understand that a flag either flows or vibrates. There you go. There's your takeaway for the day. It either goes pretty, flow, or it sets you up this way to give you a vibration, or there's so much information on it, it's just a blur and you don't know what the hell it is. Okay.
Which happens a lot.
which happens a lot. And I do it too sometimes. And you have to know your choreographer and the size. Are things going to slow down enough ever for you to catch what it is? Does it matter? But those are all the things that I think you really have to think about. And third, if you're not sure, you've got to plan enough time to get samples in and get somebody to put it on a pole, step away and look at it and go, does it work? So like even at the Bluecoats with all the geniuses I work at, we sample lots and lots of flags and see them in motion and make adjustments to make sure that they work well in motion. Yeah. So, and again, there's just some things are going to work over time. And I'll also say to that happy caller, thank you, happy caller. Try things and be okay if they don't work.
Yeah.
Learn from them, because not every situation you're going to be able to have samples and all that stuff and do that. So just be willing to say, I think this will work, and really note what works and doesn't work when it happens, and then grow from that and be okay that everything you design isn't perfect in first place. Just doesn't matter.
Yeah, especially early on. You don't have to get it all right. I think, that's the thing, Michael, is I feel like people respond to the fact that if you're really trying and you care and you're willing to grow and learn and process. Like, I feel like that's what really matters when I'm encountering someone. Not that they got it right every time, because you just can't.
No, you just can't. You just can't. And sometimes all those things also bring you back to more simple answers, and which is also great. And another one. What are you designing for? Designing indoors or outdoors? Like, you got to know your medium and where you're designing. At the end of the day, if you're doing opera, there's going to be singing. If you're doing ballet, there's going to be a point shoe. If you're against people having point shoes, that's going to be modern. Whatever, find your right one. If it's in drum corps, things are going to do this and go up and come down and play loud. And just make sure, though, what's really important in that, am I doing indoor where I can have different detail, or I'm doing outdoor where I got 20,000 people in a huge stadium? So that also asks you to simplify a little differently.
I know that one of Tim's pet peeves are with flags, just being honest with you, is when he cannot see what's on that flag, that damn flag, or if there's a word on the flag, he'll say, "What is that word?"
Yes. And if you're doing that word, you've got to either know the scale or know that you're going to have a moment where you allow people to see the word.
Yes.
And then do with it what you want, and understand there's a blur, or that it can work into another graphic. But, you got to have the moment that if you're going to create a boundary or a situation, you've got to use the situation. If you're going to create a condition, you've got to use the condition. Yeah.
Amen. Okay, Mary, I didn't have to say that, because you came from me. That is something that really upsets me, Michael, is like, if they never slow down the flag enough for me to see what the image is, that really drives me, especially outdoors on a field, because I'm having to really try to see what the hell it is from the stands. Anyway, that's
and
really,
in all fairness, sometimes I forget. I just get so excited about a thing or something, and you forget.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
And the mistake thing is really important. Tim and I have made some mistakes with flags, I'm just saying. And one of them because it was outdoors and we were thinking feathers and light and feather. Of course, the light is going to come through it. So, like, is that a feather or is that not a feather? Like, we couldn't even tell what it was when it was on the field. But mistakes happen, You learn.
You know what? The good thing, Mary, is you can just blame that on Dr. Mary.
Yeah. I think I blamed it on Tim.
Well, the other thing that's important to that same caller is understand you'll design another flag. Understand you'll do another show. Understand you'll write another drill. Understand you'll write another piece of music. Everyone, don't think you have to get everything you know into that one, because it gets really crowded.
Well, that's the classic young designer thing, right? They put every idea they've ever had into that first show they try to design. And gosh, I've had this conversation with Michael Cesario and myself. Like, take one idea and see how much you can do with it. So he taught me that eons ago, and hopefully I still remember it.
There'll be another 8 counts that you can try to cram 45 spins into. You'll be fine. Right. What happened to the music? Oh, there's music.
Oh.
Well, to that point, we have another really smart question.
Uh-oh.
How do you know where the line is when it comes to set design scale and the amount of set pieces? I feel like people still often try to do too much or put too much out there. So I don't know. Do you have an opinion about how do you find where the line is?
The easy way out of that is to say experience. And so I want to talk about that and then go beyond it. It is trial and error, looking and understanding, pushing and pulling back and finding the balance. At the end of the day, what it's not about too much or too little, because I don't think there can be too much. I don't think there can be too little. It's what's appropriate for the moment and what's needed, and that's sounding vague again.
Mm-hmm.
But I fully feel that we are just now learning to tame the great outdoors that we've been given and that we've been at a disadvantage of for years. I think that the other constant for me is do what you can do well. Don't try to spread your money too far. And I've said a million times, I'd rather have a great street lamp than a bad street. You know, you have to understand where you are. You have to understand your limitations of production and transportation and money. And you let all those things speak. And if those things speak well, there's a natural balance we're going to find. We don't, putting too much out there. What's too much? I don't know. You're talking to the wrong person. But I would say, like, I will use I'll use Bluecoats. I'll use Woodlands as examples. When there are big things, they somehow harmoniously blend into the environment. So they're not necessarily taking their own focus. They're a part of a big picture. So I cannot think of set design on its own. The largest set design, the largest scenic thing we have out there in the world is the band costume. Mm-hmm. And so that is the biggest statement we make. And how does everything work with that? How do you set up an environment where it feels at peace and at home in it? Like, that's when you're on the right track. Other than that, I think you've just got to do it and understand when you go, that wasn't worth the effort. Something just wasn't, and you'll know that in your heart and you know that in your environment. And I think you got to be willing to do that and learn from that. Did I say that okay, Dr. Mary?
I think it was absolutely perfect. I learned from it. But also that about consider what you've got. I mean, I love this concept. I'd rather have a great street lamp than a bad street.
Yeah.
That metaphor could be used for everything. I'd rather a very simple costume, but very well done.
Well done.
8,000 sequins, or whatever, overdone. And I think you also alluded to, which I really, really like, is like a designer's heart. Like what in your heart, and all your training comes together into something like, something's wrong with that, and I'm not quite sure. Like intuition, if you will.
Like, I'll take an example of, like, if you're in a situation where there isn't a lot of money and you're like, I can get 4 backdrops. That is great. Wonderful. And then people will spread them like 30 yards apart.
Yes.
So they have no relationship to each other, because when move objects around your home, 2 chairs, the closer they come to each other, form a relationship. And you might see both of those chairs better in that situation, and the further you get them apart, not only do they hold less weight, but they don't magnify each other anymore. They don't relate. And so now they become these 2 separate objects that are no longer in the camera view. So consider the relationship and how much space you want to cover, and be okay that I've got 4 backdrops, but I want to put them close enough so they relate and give a focus.
And are they going to have to move? Can they move? I mean,
don't need to.
Yep.
I'm going to be the first person to say, don't need to.
Right.
Don't need to. Don't do it if you can't. Don't do it if you don't have the kids to. Don't do it if you don't have the parents to. Don't do it if you don't have the money to. No need. Yeah. You got to find the right situation for what you're doing. And before we got on camera, what was it Timmy said? You got to find the right situation where people really understand and want your talent as a designer and are looking to do what you're looking to do. You know, if you're needing to move sets around and you're at a place that can't, be happy where you are or find a different place that can, but don't make that situation that you drive what you want into and it just breaks everybody. You know, just breaks everybody. It'll be unhappy.
Yeah, I love that concept. Can you tell a little bit more about that? Like if you're really at competing odds, is that what you're talking about? And
yeah. You know, we all have our own journey, and your journey has to be in the right place. And when it's not, be not mean to say, this ain't the place for my journey, you know, but just like find the place where your journey can happen, you know. And again, if you're the person who wants 1,000 flags and you're at a place that can't afford 1,000 flags, well, at what cost are you going to get that? You know, at what human cost?
Well, right. But also, one of the things you learn when you're getting your experience as a designer in this way that we're discussing is, let me see what I can do with what I have. How can I make magic out of just what I have in front of me? That's the real challenge, because most of the bands out there that we work with do not have everything at their disposal. So I feel like our biggest job is usually, how much can I get out of what I have standing in front of me? Or if I have one flag, then okay, I got to make that brilliant. How do I, solve that problem?
Oh yeah, and borrow the costume from somebody else that's going to go with that flag if you need to. And you know, like I think making your situation work is the most creative thing you can do. I think it's part of our age, and I'm sorry, I'm going to include us all. Part of our age is that we came up in a world that we did do that more often. You know, my first years in drum corps, you recycled the guard costume, you recycled the flag, you didn't get a whole new set of guard costumes and flags, much less the entire musician palette. You know, you didn't get that. And so, of course, I was trying to do it as soon as I could, you know, but I think it also forced us to learn to live in the limitations. I mean, the biggest high schools that I do, we're designing sets to work for multiple years that can be rearranged. You know, we're not doing like one thing that gets thrown out. We're looking at cycles of things and how many ways, like, can we work a couple of years with it? You know?
Yeah. But you know what's interesting about this too is that Mary and I have had a series of these conversations now, right? We've talked to Scott Chandler, we've talked to Michael Gaines, we've talked to Rick Subel and Andrea Forge, we talked, who am I forgetting? Mike Harloff. But anyway, super smart people, right? But Michael, like one of the things that what we're talking about is dealing with some sort of limitation and making something magical out of that. And what's really interesting about this conversation is I went into two of those conversations specifically to ask. I asked Michael Gaines, I said, what do you do when you have everything possible? Right? How terrifying that would be to me. Like my people standing in front of me can do anything. I have the budget to do anything I want to. Like that seems terrifying to me. Michael Gaines' very smart answer was, you give yourself a limitation. Right? I feel like for us, when we're out there in the real world, where I'm always dealing with the limitations I have in front of me. All right, these trumpets can't play in this band. How am I going to make that work in this show? Right? So, for example, this year, the Pride Cincinnati show, they gave themselves a limitation of that circle, the circular floor. And they made that conscious choice to say, okay, we're going to give ourselves this limitation. And then let's see how we have to deal with all the problems that creates for us. Like I thought that was really interesting. Yeah. That, like, is this not just like a basic part of good design, is dealing with, I don't know, you're designing a dress for a woman that has a certain figure, and then you have to make that fabulous, right?
And I'm good. This is all yes ands for me, because I think that is an answer that I would totally give you on one day. Then when I hear it, I go, or what you do is is find the artistic impulse you want to explore and then find what's necessary. You know, because that is a whole other way of freedom of exploration. Mm-hmm. You know, yes, to create a condition and live within a condition is a way to do it. Another way is to find the total creative impulse first and then understand what's necessary. Because you do get to the point, like, once you can have everything on the buffet, you go back to that buffet enough, you skip to the things you really like, You don't eat the whole buffet if you've been given the whole buffet a lot all your life, right? Well, hopefully. Huh. Well, maybe there's a point where I did eat the whole buffet too much. Anyway, point being that, eventually you know how to skip parts of the buffet that just don't interest you and that you don't need anymore, or you thought were really cool and now you go, meh, But I do think you can trust yourself to find the impulse and understand what's necessary.
Yeah. It makes me think back to your Art Deco Nutcracker. Like that gave you.
It did. That was a limitation.
Yeah.
It gave us a focus. It gave us a very particular thing. It gave us something that people understood. It's a way in, even though people might not know what it is. They go, oh, I see that. I understand that. They can relate to it.
Also gave a palette too, and it gave like circles, and it gave different shapes and
lines and colors,
exploration and lines, and
exactly. Yeah, that is what a period research can do. Absolutely. But I also want to take the other route or you find an idea you want to communicate, and then in that same way where the Art Deco period did it automatically for you, how do now you as a designer create your own limitation of palette and color that actually is what's necessary to communicate that idea?
Do you have an example of this kind of concept of what's necessary?
Honestly, I think it's what I always look at and I'm trying to think of, go to a show we could all look at, Bluecoats last year. What was really necessary to pull off that idea, that clear idea of, something that's moving into disorganization was a line. That's all that was necessary. We didn't have to have a lot of stuff. There was a lot of stuff, actually. That stage was the size of a performing arts stage.
But a lot of stuff.
But it didn't start that way. It didn't feel that way. It started with a simple line, a thick line that broke down. There was one clear journey, and we just kept making sure nothing else got in the way of that. Once the color palette was established, every line in that show was either a clear straight line or a clear curved line on every flag and everything, So that was we created our own palette. We only did what was necessary to create that idea. And, I tend to be a little bit of the graphic police and go, well, what's going to over pollute that? Or when do you do that because you want to create chaos in your process and then jump out of the chaos and resolve? But that show did that. It was a study in lines and when curved lines and straight lines, but that's all it was. We reduced that palette to a super limited palette. And that came from us doing that. That didn't come from a period or anything like that, Yeah.
Great example. Necessary. I love that term. I love that you have explained that that's how you think, and that makes often, and I like that a lot. Well,
I also sometimes go, let's set it in the 1930s because this is going to set it for us, and there's our limitation.
Yeah. Well, Mary, you and I have done that before. We want to see the girl in this dress. Let's go from there, right? So it's tons of ways to do it.
We like the dress. We just are really into it, or feel in our heart, or our designer's intuition, or whatever, that this is going to propel,
I want to follow up on a limitation things. Tim and I did a project for a while together, and we literally over several years built up their scenic stock to be able to expand what they were doing by adding a little bit every year. And that's something else I just didn't want to let go of when people talk about how do you get there? Well, you get there over time. So anyway, sorry, a little bit of a sidetrack to go back, but I thought that was a very much a textbook case of that. Yeah.
It's a good sidetrack.
No, that was, you're absolutely right. And man, Michael, I learned so much through that journey I took with you and understanding how you were helping us design those sets. And I've now, of course, helped that with many young bands. Like there's a tiny little band and they want to use a set piece for the first time. Okay.
Make it smart.
And I got to tell you, nothing makes me happier as a drill designer than to have one ramp to one platform and back down. And like, I can write a show around that all day. Of course, you taught me how to do that.
What high school was that, Tim? Let's give him a plug.
I'm talking about Archbishop Alter High School. Everybody knows that program. And Michael, you did the set design, for them for many years. And that super famous, much loved Stevie Wonder show. That was your set for sure. And God, just genius. That long runway. That was so much fun to write. That was, man, you set me up for that. So, Michael, before I told you, maybe think about a couple of things that you wish you had known when you started your career. Did anything come to you? I don't want to put pressure on you to answer this, but often we get very surprising answers from people, like something you wish you had known you could go back and tell yourself.
I don't know if you had all day to try to brew that down. And I think what I would wish I would have known better was boundaries, better boundaries. Artistic and personal boundaries. I think what we do as creatives is hard, and you put your soul out there, and understanding how to not let the world crush your instincts.
You unzip your entire skin for sure for everyone to see.
Yeah, and you do. And it is the thing that you have to find your right tribe to design in. You have to find the right people on both sides of the brain that are on your similar enough path, not the same path. We don't all want the same path. It'd be boring, but a path that allows your path on the creative and the technical side, because that can also, in a lot of the worlds, create conflict. You know, our pageantry world often gets reduced to, if it's not clean, it's not creditable. So performance gets sacrificed to technique, you know, and I'm a performance person. I'm a creative person. I'm a show person. I like to live in a world where we create the show we want to create, and then we step back and make sure it's in the right medium and that it is creditable, as opposed to, what are the sheets? What do I have to do to get a number? What do I have to do to win? Oh yeah, it needs to fit together as a show. That to me is complete BS, you know, and I will never live in that world. But finding my right tribe that allowed the creativity first, you know, along the way. I wish I would have understood how to maneuver that better early on. And I wish I would have learned that I wasn't a bad person for having creative instincts outside of the medium I was currently working in, because I was crushed early on. You know, I had an incredible support team in one place, but I was absolutely crushed by the response from the activity in certain realms, you know? And so I wish I would have had better boundaries and not doubted myself, and, you know, found more positive ways to really make sure those things worked. So boundaries, 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 boundaries. Yes.
I'm not sure I understand the boundaries of protecting yourself when you're crushed. Can you tell me more what you mean about that?
Well, if you're working in a situation where part of the team is more focused on winning than creating, where people then will distract from your creativeness because it's not drum corps, you know, and all that type stuff, that's where it can just really hurt your soul.
And push you and bully you into something that is not.
Bully is a great word.
Yeah,
Bully is a great word. And the unethicalness that can come from that. And it's not just drum corps. It's in every world, and not just in creative worlds. But you do have to understand how to have the personal self-value, not to devalue yourself for those things.
Yeah. Which is very hard when you're young and you're new.
4 agreements. I live by the 4 agreements.
Well, Tim, we read that book years ago.
They're good.
But
I've modified it for my own purposes, of course, because that's what I do. I redraw the coloring book. But no, it's true. It's, you know, what are they? It's use your words wisely. And I added to yourself and to others, because people also don't take anything personally. I added that, except love. You can't be the person who takes nothing in. You've got to let the love in. Don't assume. That's where we all make up shit make up stories that may not be true, and we get ourselves into trouble by making things up in our own corner. And do your best.
Great.
Done. You know, but yeah, I wish I would have had those. I let too many things get to me and make me doubt myself and my instincts. Yeah.
But that isn't that part of the nonlinear path? You know, isn't that hasn't that contributed to like a growth? I'm not talking about skin hardening. I don't think our skin needs to be hard.
I
I,
love that, Mary.
I think it's that is like part of the process that's so valuable.
Being willing to be vulnerable, being willing to be hurt is super valuable. When it gets to the point that it demeans you, it's not good.
Or
You know,
it causes you a lot of stress or physical symptoms.
physical symptoms like gaining 80 pounds again. Yeah, that was me.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's all of that, but and not hardening, because I find that that is a path that people take. I don't care what you think, blah, 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 elbow, elbow, elbow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to be like that either.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not,
It's like, how do you find that balance of remaining vulnerable, remaining open to your creative instincts, and being in the right situation where people allow you that and support that? Yeah. Super important. Yeah.
but I'm going to say one more thing about this. I know I've overspoken, Tim, but I'm just saying, like, it takes people a long time to get to that space. It's age and wisdom and a prolific amount of work, you know, and all of those things. That do we all have the luxury? I mean, does everyone have the luxury of doing it? It's something to ask.
You were absolutely right. I have been in the right personal, like long-term relationship where therapy is a lovely word in our family. I've had enough people around me at times to support me. I've had enough people when things aren't going well to be like, that's not normal, come back to center. And that is absolute luxury and privilege right there.
Right. And
It
I think
is.
sometimes there's so much, I'm not going to use the word bullying, but there's a lot of pressure on young designers and things like that, that they feel they have to fit in the box, even though they're round.
Yeah,
And
it's hard. And I mean, I'll say to every young designer out there, it is really hard to find a different way to express and then try to make that work into a very specific world.
yeah,
That's hard. And it will always be hard, you know? And you've got to find your way to create your language. And we're in a world where it's important to have the language heard.
mm,
We're in a competitive world, you know, but I'll tell you, even in the ballet world, you know, you have a particular audience, and unless you've educated your audience and you have brought your audience with you, like I can do certain things at Ballet Austin we can't do at other places because our world in Austin is happy, you know, to come in and see some dark, crazy things. There's other worlds where people want to see more classical. You got to know your market. You got to be willing to work with it. You got to be smart enough to understand how to move them towards you. And you've got to be smart enough to give people ways into what you're doing. Give
yeah,
them a way in, you know. I
yeah.
always look for that.
You have to sometimes pave the roads, you know.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And even in audience, it's like give them a way in. Give them a thing that you know you're gonna get them on your side, and then you can reel them a little further, you know. Yeah.
love it.
Until you ruin. Never mind. Until you ruin the world, you've ruined pageantry. I can't tell you how many times in my life I've ruined pageantry, but aren't we all happy for it?
You are.
No one likes the messenger. Well, I appreciate that you have, and that you continue to, and that you're strong enough to have made it through, and you're still here, and you're still loving it and giving it back. And this has been a total delight, Michael. You know, I was a minute ago. You guys mentioned. I don't know. I probably don't need to bring this back up, but like one of the things I learned in this sort of conversation we're having here at the end is I don't always have to do great, but I always have to be trying to do as long as I'm doing my best at that moment, the best I can do right now, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I don't always have to be perfect, right? But as long as I'm doing the best today that I can do today, under however I am, that's been a big thing for me to learn.
How do you create your own new perfect and allow you to be perfect in that moment? You know, understanding it is perfect. It is what it is, you know, and even if it's not something that is competitively advancing at one particular time, perhaps it was perfect for you, and you got to let that unfold. Just got to let it unfold. I'm sorry, you cut out there.
And it taught you something.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you know what, Dr. Mary, it's very important to say it teaches you something if you're willing to hear what it's teaching you.
For sure.
Are you willing to hear it, right? I mean, I know for us that's easy, at our grand old ages, it's easy, but it's true. It only has taught you something if you're willing to look at it, if you're willing to grow from it,
Right.
Yeah. May I quote an old favorite quote of mine, Quentin Crisp? Anybody know who that was? You know who that is? Okay. Old actor, performer, right? We went, when they were still alive, we went to see this very small gathering and was on a tour. And somebody said to him, it was a young person too, which is interesting. It was like, well, what else do you want to do? What else do you need to take in before you go? And he was like, oh, my dear, I never thought of it that way. I thought, what else is in me that has to get out? What else do I need to let out? And I think that's what keeps you on that journey of moving forward through your life, is what else is in you? What else have you, processed? What else is in you that has to get out? And if you keep looking at that, then perhaps your creativity will keep moving forward.
Yeah. I like it.
That's so fantastic, because as I'm, we're entering a new chapter in my life, and I've been thinking, what do I want to be doing? And I'm like, oh, that's going to come to me. I'm going to figure out how I want to express and share and help people grow and all that stuff that I do. Michael, this has been so much fun. I hope you had a good time.
Of course I did.
Dr. Mary White, anything you want to say in closing?
No, we've been talking with so many great people, and so many great people sharing their process. And guess what? No two are alike, but all of them are in it, a process.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And next week on Tuesday, Mary and I are talking to Becca Anderson, who I just think is awesome. And so she'll be here. So everybody watch for that. Michael, anything you want to say before we go?
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And
you were wonderful. I'm going to sign off, but Michael, don't go anywhere. Thanks everybody for watching so much. Really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this, tell everybody to find the recording on YouTube. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Dr. Mary. Thank you, Dr. Tim.